We're so much blessed by His words this morning, and with a great expectation, we are here to listen from Him, so that the Holy Spirit can speak through Pastor and give us great wisdom in relationship. So as Pastor speaks, please speak through him and help us to learn a lot about the relationship. We may pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. It is my great honor to be here once again to talk about relationship. One way or the other, all of us are in relationship, whether it be between siblings or parents and your loved ones or in marriage. No one is really exempt from being in relationship. And if you're not, then you're not normal. You become psychotic, So everyone are in the relationship, and there are certain principles that we need to really abide by to make it healthy. It doesn't just happen like I said this morning. So as a way of reviewing a little bit what we have left up this morning, we can kind of reminisce on a little bit about it. Can anyone tell me what makes relationship healthy to begin with? Biblical model for healthy relationship, looking at it from the image of God perspective. Those are two elements that makes relationship healthy. What are they? Separation and connection. Okay, enough separatedness as well as enough what? Connection. Then what makes separation healthy? What kind of separation that would be a healthy separation?
Mutual.
Okay, you're separated enough to have your own identity, right? And yet you are connected enough to have that bonding. So that both those two things needs to go together. That's very, very important if you were to have a healthy relationship. So then, if the relationship is characterized by fusion, you know what fusion means? In that, traditionally woman leaves not only her home but her own sense of identity to be fused into the identity of her husband. Is that healthy? So that all you have is your husband, and then his success becomes your success and all that. That is not necessarily always healthy, isn't it? So when you're dating, you got to have that symbiotic relationship where that's all you have. I'm here for you, you're here for me, and all that. But then once you grow into a relationship, you need to come to a point where, hey, we are married, we are together, we have enough togetherness, and yet we have enough what? Separateness. You know what I mean? I do my own thing. Of course, not cheating on your husband or wife, but you do your own thing to further develop and so forth. But when you come together, you become a greater unit where you share, great things that you have explored on your own, and so that you have more things to contribute to the relationship and so forth. So that's what we talked about this morning. Okay? That same principle can be applied to an organization. In order for organization to be healthy, right? Each person who are part of the organization has to enough sense of self-identity and a sense of ownership and so forth. And yet, when we come together, we got to have enough sense of togetherness and so forth. So, all of that needs to be connected. So, for me, I utilize that principle all the time, whatever I do, because let's say if I were to do a teamwork with somebody else, right? I have my own family building ministry, but if I were to come along with other group who has their own ministry, and if we were to come together and work together, what would be the healthiest way to work together? Looking at it from that biblical model of healthiness, as it applies to our relationship as well as in living organization. I think it's good for me to keep the keep my own sense of identity with my own ministry and so forth, and yet come together, find ways to work together instead of, all mumble jumble and, be intermingling together and be fused into a relationship. So it's good to have your own, and yet you have enough sense of togetherness and so forth. So a lot of times, I say this because a lot of times in traditional marriage relationship where I've seen a wife who has just totally dedicated her entire life to her husband in an expense of losing her own identity and so forth. And then 30 years doing that, and she become very detached and all that, and come to me and say, Pastor, I've given everything to my husband, thinking that if I do that, he would be happy at least. But now I've given everything to him. I lost my identity, my thoughts, and my idea. I feel like full. I feel like Pablo. I feel like I don't know anything, and yet he's not happy. Therefore, I'm not happy, and I'm miserable, and I'm going through major sense of depression in my life. And so I utilize that principle all the time. You see, something has gotten wrong because in an effort to give everything to your husband, you need to do so. At the same time, keeping your own, who you are in your identity and so forth. So you cannot give in a way that you lose your entire self, because we lose in order to gain, not lose for the sake of losing. You know what I mean? So a lot of people, a lot of Christians give and give and give in an expense of losing themselves entirely, thinking that is the way of the cross, which is totally wrong, which is not biblical. Okay? So this principle that I shared this morning goes a long way. I utilize that principle all the time when I do counseling. So keep that in mind. Okay? This afternoon, I think it's going to be very exciting this afternoon, because we have people here who are wanting to grow, wanting to really open up to further along their relationship with God and with each other. And I'm going to share another principle that I find to be very, very powerful, which is found in book of Genesis. Okay? We're still in Genesis. This is chapter 2. By the way, if you're interested, you become a member of our CD club. I call it CD club. And not only we study Bible from Matthew, we have gone up to chapter 3. Now we are going to chapter 4. But not only we are studying the Bible, but we're going to study in such a way that will provide insight to your daily living. That is my purpose. So be part of the group, join in. Everything's actually, I don't charge, everything's free. But, no string attached. But if you feel free to donate to our ministry, then, I will not let you go. I will not let you down. So let's just work together as a team. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Okay, here God shares another principles of having a healthy relationship. Verse 24. For this reason, a man will what? Leave his what? Father and what? Mother. Specifically say that, man needs to leave his father and mother. How about a woman? I guess it just assumes that woman leaves anyway. Not everyone, but generally speaking, woman leaves. But it is man who needs to leave as well. We're going to talk about what that means. A man will leave his father and mother and be what? And be what? Joined to his wife. The original word for joining here is putting together with a crazy glue. So then when you get divorced, what happens? You don't get back to your own self, but you just have a torn up self. So we'll talk about that. And then they will become what? One flesh. Next verse is, it's not PG-13, 25. The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Okay. There are three processes that God wants us to go through in order for us to have a healthy bonding called marriage. First, you go through a process called what? Leaving process. And then the cleaving process. And then you become, so leaving process and cleaving process, and then becoming one, the oneness process. Okay? So these are three major processes that we need to go through in order for us to bring up a healthy relationship. First of all, let's talk about what would entail in this very process of leaving. What would entail? What would be involved? How many of you who are married? Okay, how many of you are married? Okay, we have like 4 couples who are married, and how many of you are intending to marry? How many of you don't care about marriage? You better not. Right now, okay? You may be interested in dating, but marriage, you don't want to think about it. Okay. Okay, so we have all sorts of people who are represented here, but having been married the longest, we have this couple, lovely couple here, who's been married how many years? 17 years. Give them a big hand. You know, I have an idea that if you are married more than like 10 years, going to heaven is almost guaranteed. Because for someone to live together for more than 10 years, you're good people. Yeah, you're good people. For someone who are married more than 20 years, something wrong with it. No, just kidding. Okay. What do you think this leaving process involves? Let's hear from those who are married to begin with. What do you think you had to leave behind to marry this wonderful woman?
To walk away from being under the influence of my own parents.
Oh, wow. That was not easy. Because you have this sense where there is a sense of loyalty that you have with your parents, and the sense of connection that's been built, and almost feel like you are kind of disowning them. How did you do that? Well, with Korean wife, and anything's possible, right?
It was easier for me because I was a mature adult already at the time, so I wasn't really under their influence as much as I used to be when I was younger. But we were married at the age I was 29, so it was easier then.
So you are already kind of broken up from them in a sense where you have your own identity and so forth. So it was easier in that way. Okay. Anybody else? What do you think you have to leave behind to marry?
Other girlfriends, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, friends, just what you're comfortable with, your daily structure. And when you're with somebody else, the center of the universe kind of shifts a little bit. And it's hard to readjust to that center.
So that you said something really profound, because so the center of your life has shifted from being surrounded by friends and then so on, and then you need to allow your wife to be at the center as well and be part of that, building that part of friendship, which is not always easy, because especially I don't know about you, especially in this like Korean culture where like you leave your friends and to be with your wife, and they go like, you're like, you know what I mean? You're not a real man, you know what I mean? They have a tendency to do that, but then not that you did that, but but not that you did that. But I want to really point out that is something honorable. That is the shift is necessary. We're going to talk more about that when it comes to cleaving part as we go along. How many of you? I want you to be really authentic with me this afternoon. Okay? How many of you feel or realize that in order for me to marry and have a happy marriage, this part of me, this habit that I have or whatever that you have, really needs to go? It really needs to go. I know whatever you have, this will really get in the way of building a healthy relationship. What would that be? Anybody who's courageous enough to reveal your secret? No, just kidding. Let's be honest and be authentic. What do you think the part of you that may become a source for conflict or difficulty or ineffectiveness in marriage that needs to just go? Let me go. This is Tommy speaking, okay?
My hygiene. My cleaning or lack thereof. I'm messy, really messy. And she's a neat freak.
Neat freak.
Yeah.
So then, how long you been dating?
5 years.
5 years. And have you been progressing along the way? Do you
No.
think you're a lot cleaner than 5 years ago?
No.
Do you think that this will become an issue in your marriage?
Absolutely.
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 Okay. But not up to now?
No. Oh, we don't. I mean,
We don't talk about
we
it?
don't live together or anything, so
Oh, so she doesn't really know what's
She
going on.
knows.
She knows.
she comes over. She knows.
She knows. Hmm.
She's yeah.
She sees.
She knows.
Did she say anything about it?
Yeah.
She does?
Yeah. She's worried.
She's worried. Well, it's kind of refreshing, for you to say that, because that can be an issue. That can be an issue. I know that in marriage, some couples, they have real issues with hygiene in a sense where, like, they have to, after they use the, toilet, you need to let it sit down or something, or you need to clean it. Then, those little tiny detailed things can become a source for conflict in marriage. You have to brush your teeth all the time. Which is very common sense, but, if you grew up not doing that, but then, I don't want to go into all the details, but yeah.
That's not what I meant by
I know, that's not, no, that's not what you meant, the messiness. You see, I wanted him to clarify the messiness of your surroundings and so forth. Throw up. Hey, I tell you, I was like that. And I'm still, no. I was like that, and then it's amazing that, after I got married, I found myself like throwing my socks, roll it together, make sure it all together, like become a ball, throw it here and there. And then I tell you now, having been married, to survive in my marriage, and now I am neater than her. I can't, I go crazy whenever there's messiness, But she's like so relaxed now. She's like letting me to pay for it. So yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned about that. What are other things? Messiness can be one. What else? You don't have to reveal your drug habits and things like that. No, please. You need to go to a specialist, okay? But for other things, there are so many other things. No. Let's see.
This is a concern for a lot of people that I've heard, though, is that what if you fall in love with someone who's not Adventist?
Oh.
Or you don't necessarily, you want to be with somebody who's Adventist, but you look at the Adventist community and there's not really anyone there that you're interested in. Yeah. No, not
man?
just, yeah.
You're telling me there's no real
No, I'm just saying that's something that I'm actually on the opposite end, but that's a concern that I hear a lot of young girls say about the Adventist community.
So then, what do they need to let go?
I don't know, one or the other, I guess.
Oh, to let go of like being an Adventist.
Right. Or having to
I don't
making
know if
that
is
important.
but they need to compromise or negotiate. Is compromise always bad? Is negotiation always bad? All right.
Depends what you get out of it.
It depends what you get out of it. There is a calculating man over there. Okay. That's a legitimate concern, isn't it? A really legitimate concern, because we have small pull-up community here, and then actually when you're single woman, as an Adventist, you look at a lot of Korean single Seventh-day Adventist men, many of you don't get impressed, right? Not because they are not worthy they are not worthy, but because a lot of women don't know any better. It's true. It's true. Let me tell you one story. Let me tell you one story about a Korean woman whom I know very well. There's one guy who was interested in her. He was Seventh-day Adventist. She was taller than him. He was kind of short. But she really wanted to marry a tall Korean man. A guy came along tall, came to a Seoul Sanitarium hospital as a sick person. Though he was sick, he was tall. And somehow they got married, right? And then the rest of the story was really, really horrible. Not all marriages are that horrible, but she ended up being divorced from that person. And then she came to me one day coming to a realization that, you know what? When I was young, my perspective when it comes to looking for a man was so worldly, was not godly. So that I was not attracted to the inner beauty of the man rather than outward beauty of the man. You know? And so I was wrong. I'm paying for it. And then she said, you know what, Pastor, if I have it all over again, I would have married that short, stocky man. And later on, he became someone. You see? And it's real. So for women, I want you to know here. For a lot of women here, my wife were here, she would tell you that marry a short man. That's not what I'm saying. You see, you guys are going ahead of me. Well, what I'm saying is that marry somebody. In answering your question, marry somebody who has potential. Potential. You're marrying for the potential. And then it's up to you to make a man out of you. I mean, it's up to you to make a real man in you. And you marry somebody with potential. And I asked my wife, why did you marry me? And she said, though you were short and everything, because I saw the potential in you. And what did you see? And she said, I saw the evangelist in you. So I'm learning to be an evangelist, selling the gospel. If she didn't have believed in me, I wouldn't be where I am. And so, don't marry someone. Yeah, everybody tried to marry somebody who's well-made, ready-made. How can I respect somebody who hasn't arrived? But marry somebody who has potential and, receive the joy of, hey, looking back, man, I did pretty good. You know what I mean? And so that's something that you can think about, you can think about. Idea came up about the issue of dating non-Korean. Okay, since the issue came up, let's talk a little bit about it, even though subject is not really hinges upon that. But how do you think about the idea of dating non-Seventh-day Adventists? Is it okay, or it's not okay, or there's some trick that we can utilize to make it work for us? Anybody? It's okay. It's okay. Okay. When you're dating, it's okay.
Because it doesn't become an issue at all. As long as they look at you and they don't think.
So what do you mean by dating?
Well, because you're not thinking about marriage dating, like seeing each other and.
Just having fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
As
long
good
as you
friends.
don't marry.
Yeah.
And he knows that you're not going to marry him.
No, I mean, before the issue of marriage comes up, it's not an issue.
Okay.
Because you're just.
What if? What if? What if you get so closer to each other before you know it? and something that you have no control over, and you have a feeling for him, and everything's there. Everything else is there except that he's not Seventh-day Adventist. I know that can get tricky. That can get tricky. I don't have an answer to that. Okay. My suggestion is this: I've known a couple who cared about their faith, their orientation of their faith is so important to them, so who cares about it so much that they would not go further along in their relationship without being able to resolve the religious differences. So then what they really did was to come to a point in their relationship where, hey, we're going to kind of stop, we're going to kind of slow it down, and then this guy happens to be Mormon, she happens to be Seventh-day Adventist. So they have a lot of things in common, right? They believe in prophets and all that, the health message and all that, but one is from Utah and other places. But anyway, so they decided that, hey, since I'm Mormon, since you're Seventh-day Adventist, and since I'm man, okay, well, I want you to check out my religion. I want you to study Mormonism for 6 months. And then I am sure if you do, you'll be convinced of our faith. And deep inside, she's thinking that, you know what? What are you talking about? We've got the truth. And the truth will prevail. So she said, okay, I'll try out your faith 6 months, and then you come along and then you try out our faith for 6 months, and then we will see if we can come together. Then we'll decide whether we want to proceed or let go. Guess what happened? After 6 months of searching through Mormonism, this lady couldn't find anything. Nobody was able to convince her of Mormonism. So she walked away feeling like, there's nothing there. And so after all, he has to try out Seventh-day Adventist for 6 months. And during that 6 months, he became Seventh-day Adventist. Now he's an elder of a church. Of course, they got married, have 2 kids and so forth. So this is just an example of what can be done. But question is this: are you so passionate about Adventism enough to make that kind of claim? Because if you don't, then it's like a baloney. You don't even believe in what you says you believe, and then you put that faith in front of you that much, So we got to know what we're doing. And if you are what if you are a mediocre, I'm sorry to point this out, but what if you are a mediocre Seventh-day Adventist? And then, do you think being an Seventh-day Adventist is so important even if you are a mediocre Seventh-day Adventist, in the sense that you go to church and so forth, but you're not so excited, so thrilled, so passionate, but you're Seventh-day Adventist. It became part of your culture. So, even for that, is it important for you to marry somebody who's Seventh-day Adventist? For the sake of marriage? I think even for that, it's important. It's important because Adventism is no longer an orientation of faith. It also has become a subculture for you. The way you live, the what you eat, and all that hinges upon you being Seventh-day Adventist. So then when you become Seventh-day, when you marry somebody who's non-Seventh-day Adventist, you are opening up a floodgate of a lot of differences, like when it comes to go to church to begin with. What if that person is Church of Christ? They believe in Sabbath, which is better. But I'm going to ask you, this couple. These are powerful couple, by the way. Give them big hands today. I would like to invite you to come out because they have agreed to do that. You're gonna be treated by this couple. Please, may I have an honor of having both of you up here? They are a living example as to what can be done. They will tell you about their connection with me. It goes way back. They can stand up a little bit here. Yeah, they go way back. But before we go on, I'm going to ask you about their background a little bit. She has been in Seventh-day Adventist for how long?
Ever since I was high school.
Yeah, ever since she was high school, she has been Seventh Adventist. When she married him, and he's a lawyer. When she married him, I believe that he was not.
He was atheist.
He was an atheist. He was an atheist. Okay. He doesn't look like an atheist. He was an atheist, and then they had some struggle in their marriage, which they will talk a little bit about. And then I want to just focus our attention on one thing, that is that finally he got baptized, and then he became Seventh Adventist. On the same day of his baptism, she also rebaptized. Isn't that neat? And so they both joined in the Seventh Adventist Church, and raising their kids, and they're lovely princess there. Kids are there. And so I want to ask you, what kind of change has that brought about for you ever since you become Seventh Adventist, and for you to have that another dimension in your marriage where you not only share your lives together, but you share your faith together? How that has impacted your life? I know it's a thought-provoking question. Yeah.
Okay, while you think about that, I just wanna. When she was talking about marrying non-SDA, the dating and it's not becoming an issue until while you're dating, but the moment you married, from the first day you married, it's already become an issue. Because I go to church Saturday by myself, and the way I live, the way I think, it's like a principle of your life. How you live, how you think, whatever you do, is changed from the moment you together would become a husband and wife, from the first day you married, even the wedding itself, actually. So God is so wonderful that I become so emotional when I talk about my marriage, but God has been so wonderful. It's been a miracle that my husband become SDA, and he was atheist to begin with. However, I see many couple, they don't survive when you marry non-SDA and you become, either just going to Presbyterian, whatever. I strongly suggest you, a lot of people here, not married, I strongly suggest you that it's like you building a foundation and coming from same faith is, I cannot tell you how important it is in my experience, because even I go to church, I went to church by myself with my kids, and all the time I was so lonely, and even we were married, he loves me. I couldn't never get rid of this feeling. I'm so lonely, I can share this things that is so important to me, so vital to me, my faith, my excitement. I can never share that with my husband for the longest time. And that's not something I don't any one of you to go through. It's hard. It's hard, and I don't know.
Wow. But despite of that, you both have persevered through the grace of God. God has heard your cry, heard the cries of your children, and then allowed both of you come to a point where you end up giving her the best gift of life. Not just for the sake of marriage, but because something God has done in your life. Yeah. How your marriage has drastically changed, if there was, because of adding that faith dimension into your marriage.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to echo what she said about our real life experience, because we are probably an aberration as far as relationships go, and it's probably too much to expect that most relationships would survive the hurdles and the obstacles that we've had to, because of the differences in our faith and lack thereof in my case. But somehow 17 years later, 18 years later, we're still here. So, but anyway, to answer your question, it's added a dimension to our marriage that I never knew about. or much less considered important before, and that is, when you share the same faith, ever since we have shared the same faith, it's almost like I've remarried to a new woman. And probably, she would say the same too, that she has remarried to a new man, because it's one way I'd describe it was maybe before we were like a horse with only 3 legs or something, and now I feel like we have all 4 legs, because there's that very important part of us that's now there that was missing before. So
Now the horsepower is tremendous.
right. You might say that.
Wow.
You read Bible Genesis this morning about
Yeah.
become one.
Become one.
And before, I was always, he's here and I'm here, we walking like this. And many
parallel.
times we like more and more distance. And finally, I feel like we going together,
Amen.
one road, and we have a direction, we have a God, we know what to do. And we know what is priority in life now. But before, I never ever felt that closeness. Emotionally, it's just something always there that I just never be able to fill it up.
Wow.
I would say the same thing too, is that if when a couple doesn't share the same faith, it's hard to really feel like you're really part of each other's lives, because it's such an important, I guess unless you're very casual and just very lukewarm about your faith, and I guess some people can overcome it that way, but it's really a challenge. It's
Amen.
really hard.
Well, both of your openness today has been just profound.
Thank you.
It's really profound, because I want to really add to that. That is that, faith dimension, in terms of bringing closeness and oneness and bonding in relationship, is most fundamental. Really most fundamental, like you have mentioned, because even if you look at the level of communication, the quality of communication that goes really deeper and deeper and deeper. John Powell, actually, Powell, wrote a book called Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? In that book, he shares about 5 levels of communication that goes deeper and deeper. First level is cliche. How are you? Hi, and so forth. And then second level is sharing your information about life and whatever, sharing about sports and so on. And then third level would be sharing about positive experience. Fourth level would be sharing about some of the hard experience of life, sadness, hardness, or some of the real vulnerable stuff in your life. And then the fifth level, which is deepest level, is when both couple, when you and I share your sense of in sharing insight and opinions and ideas and philosophy of life. When I read that, I said, wow. Because in that fifth level, you are creating a deepest level of communication that is in the realm of spirituality. Spirituality. So more than sharing your emotion, what makes couple to really gel together is when both are able to share themselves, their passion for life, their longing for God, their oneness in Christ, going together in that journey where you both know that when marriage will end, the walk with God will continue. And you both will be forever companions. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And so I think that you both powerfully I don't mean to punish you guys, but powerfully shared what you both have shared with us about how we need to put God first in our relationship, how we need to really come together in sharing our faith together. You powerfully illustrate that today.
I just want to share real quick. I didn't want to take too much time, but we were actually separated. We were getting our own divorce lawyers, and we were just
Very close.
very close to divorce. I just proud of my children. They pray so much.
Oh, my goodness.
That to come back every night.
For a Christmas gift.
Yes.
We don't want any other Christmas gift. We want our
yes,
Father to come back.
They influenced me so much. And I thank you so much for that.
Oh, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. that's when we met. That's when we met. And then they have second part of story that they would love to share. Please go and be seated now. I would like to, before we go on to this cleaving part, I would like to mention, reflecting on what they have shared powerfully with us, is that we need to leave from our parents in a sense where we take the spiritual ownership of our lives. So we no longer under their influence in that we depend on them for spirituality. But we take the ownership of our faith in that we search, we dig, and we grow in God in such a way that we would become it and passionate for Him. Not only that, we would take this torch and then make it prosperous, make it grow, make it abundant for the next generation. You know? And even for that in that sense, I think we need to leave things behind. And when you and I take the ownership of your faith, and God of our father Abraham and Isaac and so forth has become my God, God of Jacob, you know, then we are ready to move on to not only build our own identity, but build our own home and marriage and place where we become a spiritual leader. We get erected to be the spiritual leader in our home. So much to share. One thing that I want to mention before I go on, I don't think that we have time to dig in, but I'm going to ask you this question and we'll move on. And next time I come, I want you to do this homework, okay? The homework has to do with leaving behind of the blind spot. How many of you think that you have blind spot in your life about yourself? Actually, blind spot is the spot that you don't even know it's there. So that's why you're supposed to raise your hand, okay? How many of you think that there got to be a blind spot in my life that you don't even know? Right, okay, now we are doing better. And I want you to think about those things. What would be the blind spot in our life? I am so blinded, I don't even know it's there. You know? And actually, going back to their story, we'll leave you alone after this. Going back to their story, through the process of counseling, it's just so amazing that even though they were on the verge of separation, they both were willing to give it another try. I know that you would like to give, try and you would like to give, to give it a try again and again and again. But I know for you, you are just like so tired of it, and this is it. I'm gonna give it just one more try, and if it works. And it seems to me that there was a definite blind spot in both of your lives, which you had to just come to a point of like, wow, new realization. Yeah. What was that like for you?
I guess something you don't even know there is blind spot. So you like, wow, I didn't know that I have that kind of problem. I mean, it's like you don't know problem was there, so you don't even know how to solve it.
And then through the process of counseling, and you came to realize, and I came to realize too, it was just a great, awakening for me. I learned a lot. And that was an issue with friendship. Friendship. Would you tell us a little bit about that, and we'll move on?
I guess being Korean, I'm very practical. I
Listen very carefully, because she has something. She and I have gone through something that is just like gave me a tremendous realization.
And I guess my parents never really I cannot really say they've been very loving parents. So I wanted to give everything to my children, that loving and then financial comfort. I wanted to give everything. So marriage was kind of like work and duty for me. Get things done, productive, provide what they need, build our financial goal.
Very
that was
functional.
it. That's it. Practical. That I'm focused and I'm moving on. That's just the where I was. And versus my husband will look around, look at the sky, enjoy the sky. Oh, there's a beautiful flower. And for me, let's go. What are you waiting for? Let's go 120 miles. Come on, you're too slow.
Even the idea of vacation was so different.
Yeah,
You remember?
I remember that. Yeah.
What was your idea of vacation?
Well, my idea of a ideal vacation is to go someplace nice and wake up in the morning, and if you feel like doing something, fine. And what time do you feel like leaving the hotel, whatever. And if you don't feel like doing anything, that's fine too. And if you feel like postponing something till tomorrow, that's fine too. And but my wife at that time, she had to schedule every minute of every hour and what we're gonna do and where we're gonna do it and where we're gonna eat and this and that. And it was like a job to me. So we just had different
different,
concepts
yeah.
of how we approach life. And I mean, to me, friendship is very important in a marriage, and meaning that as a husband, I felt like I should be able to be with my wife the way I am with my friends, because my friends are my friends for no apparent reason, for no particular reason. We're friends because we just like each other's company. Whereas at that time, our marriage had become, sort of like we're together because we have obligations to be together, and we forgot to really cultivate the friendship that I felt was really important to have. So it's
With that in mind, we're gonna continue with our next phase of our discussion, which is called the process of what? Cleaving. Process of cleaving. I want to share with you this. I want to share with you today that whatever we do in relationship, either it allow us to get closer to each other, or it would make us further apart from each other. There's nothing that we do that are so neutral it doesn't affect. Everything that we do, we affect in our relationship. So that's why in the Bible, we leave from our parents and then we need to what? We need to what? Cleave. A lot of people think that cleaving is a psychological and some kind of chemical response. That we both have chemistry for each other, that we end up like so soaking into each other. No, cleaving here is more than a psychological or chemical, process. It is a intentional. It is a process that is made by choice. We have to make a choice that would allow us to what? Cleave each other. For a greater sense of bonding in our relationship with each other. So then we need to decide whether or not the things that we do that would really enhance our relationship for each other. I want to ask you, what are some of the things that if you were to marry, being in a relationship, what are some of the things that you have to choose? What are some of the things that you have to choose to do to make relationship grow and foster and develop? Can you share? What are some of the things that we have to do to make it work or make it grow closer to each other? Let's start with woman. Okay.
Just accept who he is.
Accept who he is. Wow, that is so easy thing to do, right? Just accepting who he is, that means then you are willing, are you willing then to accept what's imperfect?
I don't know.
That's what it means. When you say you accept someone, as it is, it means that you're accepting somebody with all the imperfection. You are imperfect. You're not meeting all of my needs, and yet I'm choosing to what? To accept you. I remember a time, even in my marriage, I had like 20 list of expectations to my wife. Having grown up in a family where my mother did everything and everything, I had 20 expectations. And I lived with my wife for 5 years, and then 20 expectations ended up being 10 expectations. And then I came to a point in my life, I had to tell my wife, in order for me to cleave, which is a decision that made by choice, that I need to make a choice in that, Jewel, from now on, I am not going to expect anything from you other than what's good for you. I'm not going to expect anything from you. Because why? Because the more I expect, the more you get not only disappointed, as soon as I expect something, what happens? You get into trouble. You realize that? As soon as you have certain expectation, then you get into marriage problem. Do you realize that? Do you? Do you? Can you share one example? That's how we make it interesting and fun. Yeah. One example.
설거지.
설거지. You want him to do 설거지 every day?
No, once in a while.
Once
but
in a
when
while.
I want him to do it before I ask him.
Ah.
But he doesn't, so I said, "Can you do it for me today? I'm tired." But he wanna make a joke. He wanna make he wants jokes. He said, "Oh no, I don't want this. Sure, Ja, you do it." And I just hurt. I had to accept his joke, but it doesn't sound like a joke to me.
설거지 is not a joking manner. so you see, you have a certain expectation. How many of you share your sense of expectation in a form of complaints? Okay. All right. Let's say there's a trashes that needs to be taken out. You expect your husband to take out the trashes. Next day you come home, it's still there. Next day it's still there, it's rotting and smelling. Oh man, trashes are here. How come you don't take out the trashes? Trashes are still here. What would be the better way to handle that situation instead of complaining? Just do it. And that's what you're waiting for. That's what you're waiting for. Man, it's better to do it than asking. No, there's a better way. What's the better way? How many of you realize that your form of communication is very much characterized by, not that you're like that, your form of communication is characterized by complaining. It's possibly because nobody has ever heard you. Or unless you complain, no one does anything for you. And so then you end up like having to complain. And you end up complaining because that's the way that your family has been communicating. I tell you, there's a better way to communicate. What would that be? Let's say you want your husband to take out the trashes. Shame him into it. Shame and guilt, it really works for Christians. Big time. But it builds resentment. It builds dislike. It builds resentment to a point where you don't like that person, and then you don't care to live with that person. And so complaint does close up your mind. There's a better way to do it. Be authentic enough to say that, honey, I would really, 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 that really goes a long way. I would really appreciate if you take out the trash. Even if you don't, I will still love you. And then she will say, As long as you love me, I'm not going to do it. I don't have to do it. No one will do that. You see, sometimes our form of communication needs to change. That may be the blind spot in your life. Instead of like, you're so sad all of a sudden. Like man has no clue, right? Why you're you know what I mean? It's like